Hi crafty friends, Shana from ShanoukiArt. I have this small spiral book with this beautiful iridescent cover that I really want to use. So because I don't seem to have enough to do, I'm going to start another art journal. It has very good thick mixed media top paper in it, and it's from Kmart here in Australia, and it's I think about $5. I don't have any idea of what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to work quite intuitively in this book. I will, however, explain my thought process to you so you can see how I build my pages. So I've just grabbed things that are lying around on my desk from other projects. So all around me while I'm working, when I cut out things or perhaps don't use things, I just put them to the side of me. So I've just left that bunch of papers and things there, and I'm going to work with it. Let's see what we can make happen. So I've started with a few pieces of neutral background paper. This will build interest in my background. Since starting my square glue book, I really enjoy working in a square format. I can't explain why, I just find it really enjoyable. So I'm really happy that this little book is square. I'm going to be sticking everything down with Mod Podge. As I said earlier, this paper is quite thick, so it'll hold well with the Mod Podge. I apply a generous layer of Mod Podge, I apply my paper on top, and then I apply Mod Podge on top of the paper too. This is to waterproof it, as I'm more than likely going to add some kind of wet medium, be it paint or ink or watercolor on top. And this will help to create and make the surface ready to receive that paint medium. I'm not going to cover the entire page with collage papers. I am going to leave some areas plain, and as you can see, I am overlapping some of the pieces. I think that's enough collage in the background. I don't want to add too much. And now for my trusty gesso, one of my favorite products. I'm going to add a piece of scrap paper just under my page. This helps when I paint all the way to the edge, so it doesn't go onto the underlying pages. So I'm adding the gesso to the background paper. In some areas I make it more concentrated so it's more white. In others I thin it out a little bit more. You don't have to have an even layer of gesso. And why do I do this? I do this to soften the background. We've got the collage paper. If we stick things on top of that, it'll sort of drown everything out. So I want to push all of this into the background. It's still visible, but it's much softer. It gets that misty look. This is how I build my layers in my art journal work, and I believe this creates depth. I'm going to dry the gesso well. Amongst all the scraps was this piece of old calendar with this butterfly. It's not a whole butterfly, there is the bottom and the left missing. That is how it actually was on the calendar, but I think I'm going to work with this. It's really beautiful, it fits perfectly, and I love the colors. I'm going to fussy cut it out, and it's going to go on the bottom left of my page. I want it a little bit more off center, so I'm going to cut off a bit more on the left. I'm just going to create a fold to see if that looks better, and then I'm going to cut that extra piece off. This will obviously be my focal point. I need to now fill up the background. Because the butterfly is blue, the color is quite bold, I'm going to tone down the background and use more vintage colors. There are browns and darker hues in the wings. I'm going to go with those for my background. I'm using oxide inks. The colors I'm using are Vintage Photo, Antique Linen, and Brushed Corduroy. My inks are in sprays, but I'm not using the spray. I'm opening the bottle and splashing some of the ink onto the paper. I'm then spraying water, and I'm moving my book around and letting the colors flow and move where they want. I do use a wet paintbrush to help a little bit with the movement of the color, but I do mostly let it do it on its own. I love the effect that this technique leaves, and it looks even more amazing when it's dry. To make this page even more interesting, I'm going to add some gold leaf. Just on the top left of this page, so I've added some glue stick, and then I'm applying my gold leaf on top. I absolutely love using gold leaf in my projects. You can see I keep placing the butterfly in its spot at the bottom. This is just to evaluate how much more gold leaf I will need, if it should be more or less, depending on the size of the butterfly or the focal point. I also placed it earlier so I could see where I need to put the background colors. It's okay to be referring back and keep checking back to see that you're creating balance and harmony. I'm going to create some contrast now. I'm going to use a stencil and my vintage photo ink and my blending brush, and I'm going to apply a little bit of the ink through the stencil on the top right and a little bit at the bottom. Now the colors are the same. I used vintage photo in the watery background and I've used vintage photo for the stencil, and even though it's the same color, it's created that contrast, but it's not totally in your face. Using a black fine liner pen, I'm going to go around some of the circles from the stencil markings to create some definition. I want to lighten a little bit of the background area on the right hand side. I'm going to do this by adding some scribbles in my white acrylic paint. Now when you see this white acrylic paint going onto the paper, it looks like quite bright white, but because it is watered down white acrylic paint, it will eventually soften and it will absorb some of the underlying colors because the oxide inks aren't permanent. So it'll be a lot more faint and subtle. I need something darker on the top right to balance out the darkness of the wings. I have this paper, which is not a solid dark color. It has bits of the lighter golds. It's a leftover printable from a project a few years ago. I'm going to draw some rough circles and cut them out. I don't want perfect circles. I want them quite uneven and not perfect. Placing them to see where they look best, I've got two that are actually half hanging off the page, which I will trim off. Sticking those down with Mod Podge. At this point, I'm ready to stick down my butterfly. To repeat some of the blue from the butterfly, I'm using a blue Posca pen and I'm going to go around each of those darker circles. I'm also going to use the blue Posca pen on some of the smaller markings that the stencil made, just to bring that color through. A bit more definition with a black fine liner pen. I'm going to add a sentiment. I just have a sticker sentiment that is black with white writing, and I'm going to just cut it in half. It's a bit too long, and apply it on the left. I'm going to do a border all the way around this page using a black marker. I'm going to go as close to the edge as possible. I'm not going to use a ruler because I want that sort of rough hand-drawn look. I don't want it dead straight. I think this just enhances the overall look. I'm also going to go around the sentiment with the same marker. For the antenna of the butterfly, I'm going to use a metallic gold pen first as the underlying color, and then I'm going to go over that with the black marker. I thought I was done at this point, but something didn't feel right in the top left-hand corner. I think the placement of my sentiments maybe wasn't quite right. I couldn't unstick them. So to fix that, I found a piece of the butterfly that I had cut off earlier. It's a rectangular piece, and I thought if I stick it on the top left, it will be parallel to the sentiments. It'll continue on the blue. It created balance and it filled that gap. So I really thought that it worked there. So I stuck it down. I also added some gold leaf in that small circle in the bottom right hand corner. I really hope you enjoyed this video of my new art journal and were inspired to create your own. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Thanks again for watching, happy creating, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!